Welcome back to another edition of the Daily Face-Off DFS Report. I am your host, Brock Seguin. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We have a small two-game slate to kick off the week. I hope everybody had a good week. I know I enjoyed my little 4-day break because of the All-Star break. So hope you guys are feeling refreshed and energized and ready to go on this Monday. Again, just a small two-game slate to get us back into the swing of things. Things start to pick up a little bit more tomorrow. So, not a whole lot to talk about today, but we'll do it nonetheless. In case you missed it, we still have 12 spots left in our $5 DK contest. I dropped that link in the chat, so please go ahead and fill that contest up. We do it every single day, Monday through Friday. If you're new to the show, all the things that you're about to see in terms of the charts can be available to you if you join DFO Premium, which you can do for as little as $19.99 for the month and get access to these charts much, much earlier in the day. Another quick note, if you are a season-long player, in addition to being a DFS player, we've really started to ramp up our season-long fantasy hockey coverage coming out of the All-Star break. So a lot of posts going up about season-long, a couple new tools. I have a new fantasy hockey daily goalie rankings tool just to help you decide which goalies to play each night. Some of the best streaming options available. I've brought back the fantasy hockey notebook. So if you're working all day, not able to stay up on top of the news or our Twitter feed or the website, the notebook is a super easy way to just kind of catch up to everything that happened during the day. It's got all of the news updates, all of the players, injuries, who's in, who's out, projected lines, goalies, the link to this wonderful show, everything just in one easy to read post. So make sure you check that out if you are busy working all day. But without any further ado, let's get into tonight's game. Let's start with the implied totals. The Maple Leafs and the Senators. So it's a pretty interesting slate because we've got two games. Both favorites are basically the same odds to win tonight. Same with the underdogs. The over-unders are almost identical. So we've got two on paper look like basically the same games, but two very different feeling games. You've got two, of the top teams in the league in the Maple Leafs and the Hurricanes going head to head, and then you've got the Senators and the Devils, who, well, they're just not the Maple Leafs or Hurricanes. But looks like two pretty fun games. I mean, for a two-game slate, it looks like it could get pretty exciting. So you've got the Leafs and the Senators at the top here, 3.4 implied goals for, and then you've got the Hurricanes and the Devils, as I mentioned, pretty similar, 3.1 and 3. But both games projected to be pretty high scoring. In terms of the pace, we'll go skip ahead of that for a second. Both games expected to be very high event as well. So yeah, it looks like, if there's ever a two-game slate, I guess this one could be pretty exciting. We could get our money's worth for sure. In terms of 5v5 score tonight, Toronto 1, New Jersey 1, Ottawa 1 are the top three lines to target on the slate. You'll find Carolina 1 further down the list, which we'll get to that in a minute. Also, Teuvo Teravainen is a game-time decision. They recalled Josh Levo, which suggests that Teravainen's unlikely to play. Maybe Levo's just kind of there to be kind of a safety net in case he isn't, and maybe Teravainen will play, but all signs are pointing towards Teravainen not being available for tonight's game. So that obviously hurts Carolina 1, and then obviously we'll get to the matchup here in a minute. But yeah, Toronto 1, New Jersey 1, Ottawa 1, Toronto 2, Carolina 2, New Jersey 2, and then you've got kind of a cluster of third lines, and then Carolina 1. Again, we'll start at the top here with the Maple Leafs and the Hurricanes. Oh my God, I skipped over the goalies. Got to get back to the goalies. Peter Mrazek starts for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Frederick Anderson starts against his former team in Toronto. You got Matt Murray starting for the Senators. Unclear who starts for the Devils. I actually kind of think it's going to be Nico Daws instead of John Gillies. But if I change that on the website, people might freak out and start betting the Senators a little bit more because they don't know who Nico Daws is, and I don't want to give any misinformation. So we'll stick with John Gillies until we know for sure that's Nico Daws again. That probably won't be available to us until warm-ups start at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, so make sure you tune into DFO Twitter and dailyfaceoff.com for all of the up-to-the-minute news. So yeah, Toronto 1, Toronto 2 look like the best plays in this one. Carolina 2, the best play from the Hurricane side of things, but all in all, it really looks like Toronto 1 is the line to target in this game. Not all that surprising. In terms of the matchup, we're going to see a lot of Toronto 1 against Carolina 1, a lot of Matthews versus Aho. Matthews is also going to see about 26% of his ice time against the Jordan Staal line. not the greatest matchup. The best matchup in this game goes to Toronto 2, who will see about 51% of their ice time against the Trocheck and Svechnikov line. We'll get to that because obviously you got Trocheck and Svechnikov having the best matchup on the Hurricane side of things as well. So this is a pretty interesting matchup. You've got, Toronto 1, which has been outstanding, 41 scoring chances, 15 high danger, terrific stuff. Then they're just absolutely lights out defensively as well. They just dominate puck possession. They control the scoring chances. They can they control the expected goals for as well. So that's going to make things really difficult for Carolina 1 most of the night. And then obviously you just take a look here, and Carolina 1's numbers just are not nearly as good without Teuvo Teravainen. You don't have Andrei Svechnikov up there either. You're kind of leaving Sebastian Aho on an island. He does get Martin Necas, which is fine, but then Jordan Martinook on the left wing kind of leaves a lot to be desired when you have guys like Svechnikov and if Teravainen was healthy, Teravainen, kind of there. So again, if Teravainen plays, obviously bump Carolina 1 up a little bit, but if they don't, this looks like a pretty low event line and a line that's going to have their hands full with the Matthews line most of the night. So if Teravainen's out, I really don't have a whole lot of interest in Carolina 1 as a full stack. Maybe a little bit of Aho. He's kind of pricey at 7,200. I would probably have him a little bit. Necas looks pretty solid at 2,900. He's in the top power play unit with Teravainen out. So they have some interesting pieces there with Aho and Necas, but overall, it kind of looks like a tough matchup and probably one that you will like to look elsewhere for. The second lines will go head to head, as I mentioned, for the most part, and they're very similar. They're both very high event, very good offensively, very poor defensively. They're almost spitting images of each other. So if this matchup turns into a track meet like it looks like it could, then these could actually be the two lines to target from both teams tonight. If they just end up trading chances and both these lines really start scoring, then obviously both second lines are going to be the ones to target tonight. And it looks like, it's a 2-game slate, so we're kind of splitting hairs here, but it looks like the best matchups from both sides here. And I can get behind both of these lines. Obviously, it's a lot nicer for Trocheck to be playing with Svechnikov. They're a much more appealing full line stack, 15,700 to full stack them. 6,500 for Svechnikov, 5,600 for Trocheck, and 3,600, for Seth Jarvis. So they're much more appealing. They're like the one line that's like actually like full and like one that you would actually want to play all three players from the Hurricane side of things, as opposed to their kind of chopped up top line. But and then you've got the second line here. You got Kerfoot 2,500. He expectedly cooled off, but there's a lot to like here about the Tavares and Nylander mini stack, especially Nylander running a little bit cold right now, so his price has dropped all the way down to $5,700. So there's a lot to like there. So you obviously save quite a bit of money going to Toronto 2 as opposed to Toronto 1. The matchup looks a little bit better as well. Just the offensive numbers aren't quite as there, and obviously the upside probably isn't either, but the matchup is significantly better. Marner, I think, is looking for goals in 8 consecutive games, which is outrageous considering he couldn't score there for a little while. But I like both top lines for the Maple Leafs. The top line and the second line both look really, really good. And then for the Hurricanes, it's hard to get super interested in the top line, but the second line certainly looks like a strong play tonight. Both teams' third lines are okay on a 2-game slate. You kind of got to get weird, but both their third lines are pretty good defensively. The Hurricanes' fourth line is really good defensively, so they're going to match up against each other quite a bit tonight. The bottom six is the third lines against third line, fourth line against fourth line. So there's just not really a lot there because they're both pretty sound defensively at the bottom of the lineup. So probably don't foresee there being a tremendous amount of scoring chances at the bottom of these rosters tonight. But Toronto 3, obviously, with Mikheyev at 3,800 and Andre Kasha at 3,500, those would be the two that would draw a little bit of ownership and draw a little bit of interest for me. Just because we've seen that they've been pretty productive in the past. Obviously, the bottom 6 minutes is going to limit their upside, but in a 2-game slate, you do have to kind of get a little bit different and maybe go into Toronto 3, hoping that they can, beat up this Jordan Staal line would be the way to go. I don't know so much that they're going to have a lot of success going up against, Aho and Staal most of the night, but basically, we're getting desperate here on a 2-game slate. Graham says Carolina seems to chop up their lines a lot. Difficult to trust. Yeah, it's brutal. Like when they do this and when they elevate Martinook, it really makes Aho a little bit more difficult to play. So, Rod Brindamore is, a little bit of an interesting coach. He does some weird things with his lines, and it seems to work for them. So it's hard to argue with it. But from a fantasy perspective, it is easier to nitpick a little bit. The second game, the final game of the night, you've got the Senators hosting the Devils. Pretty easy game to break down. I will say that the Senators are going to get a number of bodies back in the lineup tonight, including Connor Brown on that second line. They'll also get Nikita Zaitsev back, which will help boost that decor as well. And then I believe Dylan Gambrell is the third one that's back in the lineup tonight. So different looking lineup for the Senators tonight. They look a little bit better, but overall, we're going to see a lot of that Nick Paul line going head to head with New Jersey 1. We're going to see a lot of the Brady Tkachuk and Tim Stützle line going head to head with New Jersey 2. The third lines will go head to head. The fourth lines will kind of just mop up against each other. So pretty simple game to break down. How it works out is basically the Senators top line is really the only one that looks like it's worth targeting tonight. The middle six has pretty rough matchups. The top line, the best matchup for the Senators, obviously the line that you'd really consider targeting. And then for the Devil side of things, best matchup on the entire slate is New Jersey 1. Second best matchup is New Jersey 2. So their top six looks like it's in play, with the third line also looks pretty appealing as well. So if you missed it, Jack Hughes is out. He's was added to the COVID-19 protocol list after the All-Star break, so he's out. So what happens is Nico Hischier moves up to the top line to center Jesper Bratt and Igor Sharangovich. They're very, very affordable. Bratt, for whatever reason, just does not get any respect, even though he's having a point per game season. He's still only 4,400. Nico Hischier at 4,100 becomes significantly more appealing without Jack Hughes. His numbers suggest that he should be a lot more productive. He has been more productive when Hughes is out of the lineup, and it's pretty simple why. He plays with Bratt when Hughes is out of the lineup, and it's worked. I think that the expected goals for goes from like 3.2 to 2.1 when he's not with Jesper Bratt. So just being with Bratt helps Hischier significantly. 11,600 to full stack them. For the Senators, their top line, Tkachuk, Stützle, and Adam Gaudette, just 13,700 to full stack. The rest of this game is really, really cheap. Boquist, Zaka, Vesey, not really an intriguing line to me at all, even though it's the Devils' second line. I think that the third line will probably end up playing more minutes, and definitely the line that looks much more appealing from a DFS perspective. That's Johnsson, Mercer, and Tatar. We saw Mercer get plenty of minutes. A lot of those minutes were coming with Bratt, so it's unfortunate that he's not with Bratt, but still with Tatar and Johnsson, he's in pretty decent hands. And if he does see a little bit of a bump in ice time without Jack Hughes, then Mercer becomes a lot better of an option than he was when Hughes is in the lineup and he's kind of reserved to third line minutes. So I do think New Jersey 3 is probably more their second line. I would imagine they'll see a little bit more ice time tonight than that second line, unless that second line obviously is having a great game. Things can happen. But 8,700 to full stack, New Jersey 3. I don't think that they'll come in with too high of ownership. I think a lot of ownership will go to the two teams' top lines here, and then obviously the Toronto and Carolina game. So New Jersey 3, to me, is one of the more interesting pivot spots on the slate. Obviously, they're still going to carry ownership on a 2-game slate, but they should be significantly lower owned than the rest of these. So anyways, let's get into it. Again, it's going to be a lot of this New Jersey top line is going to see a lot of Ottawa too. So this New Jersey top line with Hischier instead of Jack Hughes, the numbers aren't quite as good, but they're still quite solid. 3.2 expected goals for, 31 scoring chances is good enough. 16 high danger is exceptional. This Nick Paul line that the Senators like to use as a shutdown line with Paul and Connor Brown really hasn't shut anybody down yet this year. Offensively, they don't really do much. And then defensively, they've been getting absolutely torched. 37 scoring chances for against per 60, 12 high danger, 41% expected goals for share. Obviously, those numbers get inflated when you are going up against the other team's top lines every single night. But some lines go up against other team's top lines and to shut them down and do it successfully. This line doesn't do that. So, it looks like a really good matchup here for New Jersey 1. If they're going to see what was it, like 70% of their ice time, 75% of their ice time against that line, they should have plenty of success tonight. So Hischier and Bratt at, the mid to low 4,000s seem like absolute bargains tonight and two of the best options on the entire slate for sure. As I mentioned, the second line for the Devils really doesn't do a whole heck of a lot. So we're going to look to this third line, which again, their numbers aren't that great either, but you really don't need them to be, they're just so cheap, and they are going to actually see some power play time, which you're not really going to get out of Boquist or VC. So you're going to get Johnsson, you're going to get Mercer, you're going to get Tatar on the power play unit or a power play unit. They'll probably be split up, but they're at least going to see power play time at 8,700 to full stack. The numbers aren't that outstanding. The matchup isn't all that great either, going up against Ottawa 3, but Ottawa 3, for as solid defensively as they are, offensively they do nothing. So it is a matchup where, you got a 46% Corsi 4 versus a 56% Corsi 4. So New Jersey 3 could carry the play to them a little bit. And again, they're going to be maybe 10% owned, probably closer to 8. And they're a nice pivot option at super low. Like, I mean, you can play them and play them with literally, the most expensive guys on the slate, no problems. And then as for Ottawa 1, really the only line that pops out, the only line that's even close to being in the blue here for the Senators, really the only line worth considering if you are playing the Senators, and they've been really, really good. Obviously, the numbers are better when Norris and Batherson are in the lineup, but Stützle and Tkachuk have actually shown quite a bit of success. Stützle's played, super well as of late. He's really stepped into his own here, playing center without Norris, without Batherson in the lineup. Him and Tkachuk have been, doing just fine. So 35 scoring chances, 14 high danger. The numbers are really solid. They're going up against the Devils' second line most of the night. The Devils' second line isn't terrible defensively. 33 scoring chances against isn't great, obviously, but the most important part is they're the Devils' worst defensive line by the numbers. So it doesn't really matter if they aren't the worst defensive line of the slate. They're the worst defensive line that the Devils have to offer. So it should open up an avenue for success for Ottawa 1 tonight. Obviously a 42% expected goals for share for New Jersey 2 certainly opens the door for Ottawa 1. So that's pretty much it for the line stacks at 5v5. Again, it's 2-game slate. I think the one way that you can try to get different tonight is just by leaving salary on the table. The pricing is a little bit soft tonight, so people will be able to get the guys that they want in their lineup. So even though you're stacking lines that are probably going to be pretty high owned because it's only a 2-game slate, just leaving a little bit of money off the table, whether it's playing a different defenseman than one that fits into your lineup perfectly, that's probably the way to get really different, other than trying to get just super off the board and picking lines that don't make a lot of sense. So, pricing soft, people are obviously going to be one-offing, your Heishers and your Brats to get them into your lineup. But maybe do something a little bit different, and that'll be the way to differentiate tonight. One guy that is kind of interesting before we move on to the power plays, defense, and all that good stuff is Adam Cadet at 2,500. Expected to see some power play time. Could be on the top unit again. Unlikely, more likely to be on the second unit, but at 2,500, his shot volume has been really, really sturdy as of late. And then he's obviously seen plenty of ice time, or will see plenty of ice time with Tkachuk and Stützle tonight. So, not a guy that's really had a whole lot of success in his NHL career to date, but the shot volume has been really, really solid for a guy that's 2,500. Will most likely be on the second power play unit. And then just, anytime he spends with Tkachuk and Stützle, whether he lasts the whole game or not, at 2,500, he looks like a really nice dart throw option tonight. In terms of the power play report, kind of interesting tonight because you've got the Maple Leafs with the best power play on the slate, one of the best power plays in the league, but you're going up against the Hurricanes penalty kill, which is by far and away the best kill in the league. So that actually works out to the worst power play advantage for the best power play, which is pretty interesting. Basically, just two of the best units going head to head should be really interesting to watch that one. The Hurricanes, the third best or second worst, whichever way you want to list it, power play advantage tonight. Their power play just slightly below or above average, going against a Maple Leafs power penalty kill that's been really quite solid. So that's interesting. The best power play advantage is actually for the Devils, which has the worst power play on the slate. They're going up against the worst penalty kill on the slate. So it's just strength against strength and ineptitude against ineptitude on tonight's slate. So it's kind of a weird one to be sure, but then you got the Senators power play, which has actually been very good, going up against the Devils penalty kill has actually been very good. So it's just kind of bizarre how everything is going to work out. It's really difficult to be like, hey, yeah, definitely the Devils the best power play tonight when they're actually the worst unit. Matchup wise, it looks okay because the Senators have the worst penalty kill. So we'll see how it kind of all works out. Is the Hurricanes power play penalty kill unit capable of shutting down the Leafs power play? Certainly, but the Leafs power play certainly has just as good of an opportunity to get the job done because they're equally as talented on the power play. So it's just a very interesting 2-game slate. Like I said at the start, it's for a 2-game Monday slate, it could be a lot worse. In terms of the defensemen tonight, you've got your big top expensive dogs. Obviously, you got Shabbat, you got Morgan Riley, you got Tony DeAngelo. Those guys obviously are the ones that you're going to want to play. If you're playing Ottawa 1, try to get Shabbat in there. If you're playing Toronto 1, Toronto 2, try to get Riley in there. If you're playing Carolina 1 or 2, get DeAngelo in there. I love Severson if you're playing New Jersey 1. Obviously, he's in the top power play unit with them. He's been spectacular without Dougie Hamilton. His price is way too cheap at 4,800, so one of my favorite defensemen tonight. But then there's plenty of value as well. Jakub Slavin, a guy that I basically talk about every single time the Hurricanes play, he's still too cheap at 4,500. Brady Shea and Brett Pesce, way too cheap. Shea, 3,500. He's got probably better upside than Brett Pesce. Pesce offers a little bit more of a sturdy floor at 2,900, so kind of pick your poison. Outside of Morgan Riley, the entire Maple Leafs blue line is $2,500, so kind of pick your poison. You've got Rasmus Sandin, 2,500. He's the guy that's probably going to play closer to 19 minutes, but we'll see second power play usage. So upside-wise, Sandin's probably the highest upside outside of Riley just because of the power play exposure. So if you can't fit Riley with Toronto 1, Sandin probably makes the most sense because he's going to at least have a little bit of correlation with Michael Bunting on the second unit. Justin Hall is the other guy. He's probably got a little bit of a sturdier floor than Sandin, but the upside's not there because he doesn't do quite as much offensively, but does play a decent amount with them at 5v5. Whether it's the first or second line, you kind of just got to pick your spots here. With Zaitsev back, Brandstrom's a little bit less appealing. 2,500, he still will see power play time, but he's probably going to be closer to 16 minutes than 25 minutes or whatever he's been playing. But, at 2,500, you could do worse. You got Subban, 3,400. Okay. His floor is okay. Upside wise, maybe not. But yeah, like the whole blue line is 2,500 tonight. You basically just got to pick your poison. Ty Smith is one of the more interesting ones at 2,500. He's going to pair with Subban tonight. Could play close to 20 minutes. Has enough offensive game. His floor is basically 0, but we'll see some power play usage. Could play close to 20 minutes. So Smith, Sandin, and Hall and Brandstrom. Those would be my 4 favorite minimum price guys. I obviously prefer the Pesces, the Sheas, the Slavins, those guys a little bit more. All right. Before we move on to the goalies, just a reminder, we've already got 4 hat-trick picks in the comment section. I hope you've been thinking about who's going to score a hat-trick tonight, because if you pick the guy who scores a hat-trick, you get a free month of DFO premium. So comment who you think is going to score a hat-trick tonight. We've got a Brat, we've got Svechnikov, we've got Stützle, we've got Tkachuk. So who do you think is going to score a hat-trick? Don't pick any of those guys, because whoever picked them first gets the free month. But get your comments in quick. Make ssure you pick the guy who scores a hat-trick tonight. We've given away two free months so far, so let's keep that rolling. Goalies for tonight, again, kind of a weird night with just 2 games. 2 games that the over-unders are basically the same. The betting lines are basically the same. So the goaltending matchup looks almost identical as well. Matt Murray and Peter Mrazek grade out as the best options on the slate, which is really interesting because the betting odds and DraftKings are completely opposite. So the two cheaper goalies are the betting favorites, and the 2 expensive goalies are the underdogs. So that makes a little bit of sense for Frederick Anderson. It makes no sense for John Gillies. I mean, the Senators have actually played pretty well as of late. And then you've got the Devils riding a 6-game losing streak. They've given up over 4 goals per game. So that one doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I can get behind Anderson to a certain extent, but Mrazek at 7,300 just looks like a bargain. I actually bet the Hurricanes to win tonight, because whenever the Hurricanes are like plus 120 underdogs, it's kind of hard to ignore that. It's like, okay, there's so much value there for how good this team is that they're worth my money, in my opinion. And the betting line has moved in their direction, which makes sense from this morning. But yeah, 8,100. Anderson is, to me, probably, Gillies is the most risky goal in the slate without question. But Anderson is risky enough at 8,100 that it gives me some pause. Now, if you want to play the narrative that Frederick Anderson going back into Toronto, he was probably a little bit disrespected towards the end of his career there, and he's going to stand on his head, fine. I'm just saying I probably wouldn't play 100% Frederick Anderson tonight. I am a little bit concerned about him. He was just at the All-Star game. He's coming right back into Toronto and starting right away. I'm a little bit worried about that. Obviously, the All-Star break or the All-Star game is the most taxing thing ever. But how many beers did he have in Vegas this weekend? I don't know. Maybe a lot. But all of this to say is that, to me, in a game that is pretty much a toss-up between Anderson and Mrazek, you've got Mrazek at 7,300 and Anderson at 8,100. I'm going to go with the guy that provides you with a ton of salary relief in a game that looks like a coin flip. So I do like Anderson. I think that the one thing to like about him is that I would expect that the highest price point, the toughest matchup, will probably keep the ownership at a pretty reasonable level. And as I mentioned, he could go into Toronto and steal the show. I actually bet him to potentially post a shutout tonight, just on the odd chance that he just has like on the top of his game facing his old mates. But yeah, 8,100, I can get behind it if if it makes sense in your lineup. If you're fading the Maple Leafs, Frederick Anderson at 8,100 is fine. But as I mentioned, Mrazek 7,300 and Matt Murray 7,600 look much, much better. Matt Murray's actually played exceptionally well since coming back from the AHL, and 7 starts since rejoining the team in early January. He's got a 924 save percentage, so he's been really good. This matchup looks solid. This is a Devils team. As I mentioned, they're on a 6-game losing skid. They've given up over 4 goals per game. They've scored under 2 goals per game over that stretch. Now you take Jack Hughes out of the equation. This looks like a Devils team that's probably going to struggle a little bit tonight. I could see the Sens winning like 4-2 or something like that, and Matt Murray potentially being the highest scoring goalie on the slate as he's currently projected. So we've got a Jack Hughes Hattie call. It's gutsy. I don't know if it's going to come through, but it's gutsy nonetheless. Anyways, that's pretty much going to do it for today's show, other than my hat trick picks, which my expensive hat trick pick is going to be, I don't think anybody's said them yet. I'm going to go Nico Hischier. He doesn't shoot enough, so he's almost certainly not going to score a hat trick. But I'm going to go with Nico Hischier, and let's go Vincent Trocheck. We'll go Vincent Trocheck and Nico Hischier as the Hattie picks tonight. As I mentioned, comment yours below if you haven't already. Make sure it's not somebody that's already been picked. If you get it right, we'll give you a free month of DFO Premium. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We've got a much bigger slate tomorrow, so tune in again tomorrow, 5:15 p.m. Eastern, for I think it's like a 7-game slate, something like that. The Tuesday slates are always fun, so be sure to join us then. Until then,